into the Sportsmemo College Football Every Game on the Board podcast with our closer, Robbie Veno. Rob, welcome to the pod. How are you?
I am doing great today, Drew. How about yourself, buddy?
I'm doing good. We're getting the back half of the card here. I believe 200 down to 238. So hopefully, if you're riding out there, drive safe. If you're just listening in the comfort of your own home, enjoy the time with your family. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. Robbie, your 5% in college football. The total's 80%, 8-2 on the year, and the 4 and 5% plays 34 and 22, up over 60% year to date. So you're hitting the big plays in college football. Also pretty good in college basketball and the NBA. In November combined 18 and 10, 64%. So seeing it well really across all sports. Robbie's coupon code here, and everybody's coupon code is shootout at checkout, and you can get his 7-day all access for half off of the posted price at sportsmemo.com. That will get you the next 7 days, all plays in every sport, no matter the play designation, for just $49. Robbie, what are you doing right out there on the basketball courts in the college football and NFL fields?
Boy, I don't know. It's working out, Drew. I mean, the sleep has been reduced, that's for sure. I think that's the one thing that happens to all of us this time of year. But I think that you said it the other day, that early season basketball handicapping is made somewhat easier by the fact that not only is our job, we talk about it all the time, how busy it is for us, Drew, but it's equally as busy for the odds makers. I know you brought that up the other day, and it opens up some holes sometimes if you can find teams early. And I've been repetitive on a couple of teams that I've played here so far this season. But if you find them until the odds maker gets the perfect adjustment, you can capitalize. And I think as far as college hoop has gone, that's what we've done. And I think NBA, probably just a little bit more selective. That process has led to the real good run right now, 75%, 9-3 last 12.
All right, well, good stuff, Robbie. We'll start off with game number 201-202, 3:30 Eastern kick here in the Big Ten. Maryland at Penn State. 53.5 the total, with the Nittany Lions laying 13.5 in Happy Valley.
Yeah, this one, Drew, we left the air yesterday talking about any potential weather in these games in my neck of the woods up here, mid-Atlantic, Northeast. This was the one I pointed out, and I'll quickly start with that. There's a 100% chance of rain at this game Saturday in State College, and not only is it rain, but it's going to be a cold rain. The morning's going to start off with freezing rain, so you get that sleet type of stuff, and by the time game time comes, it's an early game, 12 noon. Temperatures figure to be around 36, 37 degrees with that rain still coming. So a real cold rain, nasty day could turn it into a ground type affair, both running games. We've often said on the show, if Maryland can't run, they can't win. They were able to run last week on that Ohio State defense, and chances are they'll have some success here against Penn State as well, a team that gives up close to $180 on the ground per game. So I would think that Anthony McFarland, who became an overnight sensation last week with his 214 yards in the first 16 minutes of the game, there'll be some opportunities for Maryland to use that running game. Same for Penn State. I mean, we saw last week that Maryland's defense has not played well in most instances this year, and Trace McSorley and company should be able to make some plays. Field conditions really dictate a lot of this stuff, Drew. It's a grass surface, and therefore it can get ripped up pretty quick, I would think, in this type of weather. So for me, probably a little more thought has to go into whether or not I play this game at all. Right now I haven't.
We got Texas Tech at Baylor in the Big 12 up next, Robbie. Texas Tech laying 6 on the highway, 65 the total.
Yeah, now in this game, there's really one question and one question only, and that's who's going to play quarterback for Texas Tech. You got your top 3 QBs for Texas Tech all right now with a questionable tag next to them. Alan Bowman, of course, we know, the starter with the collapsed lung, seems to be getting nearer toward playing, although that has not been confirmed by any stretch so far this season. In fact, like I say, he's still listed as questionable. He did warm up a little bit last week with no intention of ever playing, just threw the ball around. Jet Duffy, obviously one of his better assets is his mobility, but he's got a knee injury that sort of limited him last week against K-State. McLean Carter, the original number 1 to start the season, had to come in the fourth quarter. We may see McLean Carter. He's been in a couple of spots the last couple of weeks in fill-in mode coming off that high ankle sprain. Otherwise, if you get none of those, Drew, what you wind up with is a 14 walk-on sophomore Colt Garrett. Head coach Cliff Kingsbury said he's ready to go just in case, but we'll see if one of the other three doesn't get in this game. I would think that with everything at stake for Texas Tech, bowl eligibility, of course Baylor has bowl eligibility on the line as well, but not only the bowl game for Texas Tech, but really Cliff Kingsbury's job is now being talked about. So I think that one of the top three quarterbacks, probably either Carter or Bowman or Carter, whichever way you want to say it, will probably be your starter in that game. But please check it throughout the week. I'm thinking, though, that reading between the lines here, one of those guys is going to go.
Yeah, that's a big power ratings move, at least in my book, if Bowman can play or not. We got San Jose State at Fresno State up next. Looks like 49.5 the total. Fresno State laying 32 at home.
And not a lot to play for, Drew. I mean, Fresno State gets to kick back and see who wins the other side of the Mountain West Conference this weekend. Fresno State already locked into the championship game. They've won their side, so laying 32 with a team that doesn't have a lot of incentive, especially when you think about the fact that you might want to keep some starters healthy for the championship game itself. I don't know that that's the route Jeff Tedford's going to go. He's a veteran coach. He's not going to really let on whether or not he's going to go with or how long he'll go with starters or how he'll utilize his personnel for this particular ball game. But for San Jose State, you know, the fundamental problem in this game is monumental. They don't run the ball whatsoever. They're limited only to being a pass team. And you know, when you play Fresno State's pass defense, it's difficult. Fresno State only allows 190 passing yards per game. So for Josh Love and that talented crew of receivers, some tough sledding, but I would think plus 32 in a game where Fresno State might kick it into high gear for a half and then, you know, let off the pedal in the second half. Maybe that provides enough of an opening where 32 can sneak in.
Robbie, heading to the Big 12, we got Kansas State at Iowa State, 40.5 the total. Iowa State, the Cyclones, laying 13 in Ames.
Yeah, and believe it or not, bowl eligibility is on the line for Bill Snyder and company after that win last week against Texas Tech. What seemingly is going to be his last year, Drew, I would think that the K-State team will put forth a huge effort to try and get him to a bowl game in, like I say, what looks like his last year of coaching at Kansas State. So there's a motivational angle to the K-State side here. Obviously, Iowa State's been the better team so far this season, but Iowa State, with a loss last week to Texas, I don't know how the reaction will be. I would like to give, and I probably, in my mind, I would give Matt Campbell, the head coach of Iowa State, the benefit of the doubt and say that he will have his team ready to go here and not let them kind of sulk after losing that game to Texas last week. 6-4, still a chance to go 7-4. Remember, they had one game that they did not play against South Dakota State. Good defensive battle. You know, when you look at these two teams' overall statistics, Drew, they kind of look like mirror images. K-State has had a real problem winning games this year, but their statistical numbers are not that far from those put up by Iowa State. I think you're going to see a low-scoring contest, good defensive effort on both sides. K-State moves at a snail's pace offensively, so possessions are probably limited. If there's any way to look here, for me, it would probably be toward the under and maybe toward Kansas State here in a what I would think would be a big emotional effort for head
Robbie,
coach
in the
Snyder.
SEC West, we got LSU traveling to College Station, play Texas A&M, 47.5 the total. Texas A&M laying 3 at home.
Yeah, Jimbo Fisher's done a great job with this team this year, Drew. When you just look at the balance that they show on offense, over 200 rushing, over 250 passing, pretty good, better than what I thought they would be offensively. So he's done a real good job there bringing in his system and making it work. I think LSU faces a real problem here on the field, and that is the fact that Texas A&M's run defense is outstanding, only allowing 81 yards per game. And LSU really does have to run the football in order to set up the pass. To make it further difficult for LSU, their top wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, listed as questionable right now. 45 catches on the season, 725 yards. Those are big numbers for an LSU wide receiver. If you take him out of this game, should he not be able to go, it makes it even more difficult for the Tigers if, in fact, they can't find any ground game against that staunch Texas A&M run defense. I think that's a big edge here. I'd probably look towards Jimbo Fisher and his squad in this game. They've done a real good job against the tougher teams in the West so far this season. Haven't won them all, but they've been competitive, and I think they can get a win here at home against
Robbie,
LSU.
Heading to the Big Ten, we got Purdue at Indiana, 9 a.m. Pacific kick. The Boilermakers laying 4 on the road, 64.5 the total.
Yeah, and there's a lot of outside external noise now surrounding Jeff Brom, of course, with the Louisville job coming open. He happens to be, I talk about him a lot on this podcast just because of his honesty during press conferences, one of my favorite coaches right now. I don't think that he will let the outside interference affect this game, what is an in-state rivalry, what is a very important game to both of these teams where that's concerned. So I think Brom can keep the outside stuff off the table right now and focus on coaching his team. Saw him Monday speaking again at his Monday press conference, and the concern obviously for Purdue, and it will be the same for Indiana, is going to be the defensive secondary against the passing game of each side here. Both teams have opportunities to make plays through the air, Drew. The weather's not going to be a factor here. That was the first thing you want to, one of the first things you want to check for in these games played in the Midwest and East. But don't see any problem with the weather or wind in this particular situation. For Purdue, a big explosion last week again with points. They do lose the game to Wisconsin. Kind of a disappointing loss for them. But, again, I feel like Jeff Brom can pick his team right back up. Rondale Moore and company have explosion in them. It'll be tough for Indiana to stop them, but vice versa on the other side. I think that's why we've seen the bump in total here, 62 pushed up to 64, 64.5 right now. Makes a lot of sense to me. I think both of these sides can go back and forth. One thing to note, if anybody out there, again, if you're playing first halves or half times, whatever, take note of Indiana and their 10-1 over mark in the first half this year. They played 11 games. 10 of their first halves have gone over the total. They're 8-3 against the spread in the first half as well. So real fast starting team, but 10-1 over the total. Maybe just a flyer on Indiana over in the first half.
Robbie. We also got a noon Eastern kick here. Navy at Tulane, 53.5 the total. Robbie, this is a tricky handicap because it's two forms of the option, not the exact same option offense, but option principles nonetheless. And we're seeing mostly sevens. That's the Tulane Green Wave laying it at home in New Orleans.
Yeah, and you just can't like the direction that the Navy defense has gone the last 5 weeks, Drew. Now, I'll sort of put some type of context around that by saying their last 5 opponents have been Houston, Notre Dame, Cincinnati, which is not known for offense, UCF, and then Tulsa. Those 5 opponents have averaged 495 total yards the last 5 weeks against the Navy defense and 40 points per game. Willie Fritz's team has shown on occasion the ability to really put up some numbers on the offensive side of the football. So I think that Navy's defense probably in some trouble here. Can they match what Tulane can produce? The quarterback situation has been a mess all season long. Zach Abey in there now. I would consider him more of how do I put it? A pedestrian. Nah, I don't want to call him pedestrian because he's been there so long, but he doesn't have the breakaway ability or the home run ability of Malcolm Perry at quarterback. So Navy moves a little bit slower. And this could end up being a high-scoring game, Drew, just because of Navy's defensive deficiencies and the fact that they'll have to match Tulsa in this game, I think. But I do like Tulsa. I think that or Tulane, excuse me. I keep calling him Tulsa. I do like Tulane because I think head coach Fritz has done a good job elevating this team all season long, especially offense. Since they made the switch at quarterback to McMillan, the LSU transfer, it's been better for Tulane. I think they get the better of Navy here.
So like in the Green Wave -7, Robbie?
Like in the Green Wave a little bit, Drew. Like I say, those defensive holes in Navy right now just – and it doesn't matter. Like I say, 2 of those 5 opponents were Cincinnati and Tulsa. And neither one of them are offensive juggernauts, but Navy just not able to stop anybody right now.
Got the battle for Louisiana in the Sun Belt. Louisiana Lafayette, Louisiana Monroe, 72 the total. Looks like Monroe laying 2.5 at home.
Yeah, and a battle for that division title, Drew. If ULL wins, we'll break it down real quick here. If Lafayette wins this game, they win their side of the conference, and they will go to the Sun Belt Championship game. If they lose to Monroe, it opens up the door for Arkansas State if they beat Texas State to become the winner of the division, and they would go to the championship game. If, in fact, UL Monroe wins and Texas State beats Arkansas State, then Monroe goes. They're the third team in the door because they lost last week to Arkansas State. So a lot to play for here for all three of those teams, Arkansas State in their respective game as well. I don't know how else we break this one down, Drew, except from starting with offense here. The total obviously indicates that will UL Monroe be able to get enough stops in the run game against Lafayette to get the victory here. Obviously, Monroe, a better passing team, and I think that Caleb Evans and company might be able to put up points quicker if it gets into a shootout. But I don't know that they'll be able to stop Trey Regis in that ground game of Lafayette. So to me, it's a back-and-forth type battle. I just would have rather seen this total for betting purposes, maybe around the 65, 66 range for me to get there. I would like to have access to 67 for a win. Certainly never going to get that in this contest. The total's already above that. So I probably have to sit back and watch this one. But it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top here on this side of the Sun Belt Conference.
AAC clash, 3:30 Eastern. Southern Methodist SMU at Tulsa. Looks like SMU laying 2.5 on the road, 57 the total.
And they've played good ball second half of the season. I think we started noticing them about 6 weeks ago, and SMU has certainly gotten better as time has gone on. But in this particular instance, Drew, I think that Tulsa has a nice fundamental matchup. Offensive play calling for Tulsa this year. And with Philip Montgomery having the background in the Art Briles system, the air raid type system used at Baylor, and in fact that that offensive philosophy can go 50-50 balance as well, because at Baylor they used to run the ball quite a bit too in that system. But Philip Montgomery's gone overboard this year with the run. 65% running plays, 35% pass plays, a lot of that due to the fact that he hasn't found an effective quarterback. But that could bode well here against SMU, because SMU's run defense has not been very good all season long, giving up 203 yards per game. I think that sets up well for Tulsa to run the football and maybe keep possessions down for SMU. And on the other side, when Tulsa's on defense, what they do best is defend the pass. Their pass defense has been significantly better than their run defense this year. Tulsa only allowing 161 yards per game through the air. SMU with that talented core of receivers and Ben Hicks throwing the ball to Prochet and company out there. Tulsa could take that away from them and force SMU to be somewhat of a running team here. I like the fundamental matchup with the Tulsa side here. Pretty good opportunity for them as an underdog.
Robbie, we got Charlotte at FAU. You mentioned Briles earlier. He's not the offensive coordinator anymore, but 17.5 either way. The Owls are laying in Boca Raton, 54.5 the total.
Okay, so we have Charlotte here. We talked yesterday a little bit, Drew, about coaches that have been let go already before the season ends. Who's going to coach their game? Who's not going to coach their game? Brad Lambert, the head coach at Charlotte, fired last week, but he is going to coach this final game. So whenever that happens, you have to try and get inside the kids' heads and wonder how much they like Coach Lambert. He's been there 6 seasons. The group that's going to leave Charlotte and move on obviously has been there during his entire tenure, as has the third-year group. So, there's probably a lot of sentiment for the head coach. You'll get some emotion out of Charlotte in this game. However, again, I just don't know how far that emotion can go here, because Charlotte, against this particular Florida Atlantic offense, the one bit of good news for Charlotte is what they do best is defend the run. And right now, Lane Kiffin has really, really turned Florida Atlantic into a run-oriented team. So if Charlotte can stop or at least contain Singletary and company a little bit, they got a chance here to cover the number. Betting money doesn't think so, because I think we've seen a little bump in this one from 17 to 17.5. It may have opened even a little lower than 17, but certainly there's been Florida Atlantic money. You could see FAU running away and hiding in this one, but I'm not convinced that they will, Drew, so I won't play. I don't want to take any part of Charlotte relying on if they can stop the run and if they can play 4 emotional quarters, because I don't believe they can. For me, the line's just a little bit too high priced right now.
Arkansas State at Texas State, aforementioned game earlier in the podcast, minus 11. That's what Arkansas State's laying on the road, 53 the total.
And we have another head coach situation, right? Everett Withers let go, and Everett Withers will not coach this game. The interim head coach for Texas State is going to be Chris Woods, defensive coordinator, inside linebackers coach. Kind of a dead team walking right now, right? Texas State. Everett Withers did make some improvements with this team throughout the season, but they were certainly more along the terms of the defensive side of the ball than they were the offensive side. So Everett Withers, a guy who's known for explosive offense, wasn't able to produce that here at Texas State, but certainly the defense got better. You're playing a motivated Arkansas State team. We've gone over their offensive numbers the last few weeks, Drew, ever since that one bust-out game on midweek television where Justice Hansen and company went crazy. They haven't stopped rolling from an offensive standpoint, and Texas State just does not have any ability to match them point for point. So they would have to be able to do what they did last week to Troy and when they held Troy to 12 points and lost 12-7 and got an easy cover. I just don't know that that's in the cards for them here against Arkansas State, a team that's clicking on all cylinders. Texas State offense not that easy to defend. I think that with everything Arkansas State has to play for, you have to look at their side or else don't look at all.
5 games left, guys, and remember the coupon code SHOOTOUT at checkout, 7-day all-access package with Robbie Veno for half off at sportsmemo.com. Robbie, we got North Texas at UTSA. Looks like UNT laying 24 or 24.5, depending where you're shopping. 51.5 the total.
Yeah, Texas, San Antonio, just an absolute disaster defensively down the stretch here, Drew. May have gone over these numbers last week, but in case I didn't, their last 4 games, Southern Miss hits them for 487 yards. Alabama Birmingham hits them for 668 yards. Florida International, 453 yards. Marshall last week, 505 yards. A couple of those that I just mentioned were season bests for 2 of those teams. So Texas San Antonio, we never like to say a team quits, because I don't think teams do quit. I just think that in instances they're either overwhelmed, thoroughly outmanned, so injury-riddled that they can't, put up a fight at the end of the year. Whatever the case is for Texas San Antonio, it's happened to them. It'll probably happen to them again here. That was a huge win for North Texas against FAU last week. Mason Fine gets hurt in the third quarter. Looks like he's not coming back. 2 series later, he is back, playing pretty well. They ran the football better than they have all season long. I don't think that North Texas will have a letdown situation here, nor do the bettors. This game has moved as much as any so far this week. A lot of North Texas money, and I think that's more a product of fading UTSA right now, Drew. You just can't get behind a team that's only averaging 13.5 points per game right now and is giving up yardage and points in droves the way I just mentioned Texas San Antonio is. So for me, the price has flown probably out of range, but North Texas isn't going to have any problem winning this game.
On that North Texas game for the backup, I believe he was in for 2 drives. Both drives were touchdowns, so something to have in your back pocket there as well. We got 225, 226, Notre Dame at USC. Looks like the Irish laying 10.5 or 11 in Los Angeles, 54 the total.
Yeah, and for those who would like it just a little bit more in depth than we'll get here on the podcast, this actually was a free write-up. It's available at Sportsmemo. I did this one, Notre Dame at USC, but a couple of reasons why I recommended Notre Dame at the time, minus the 10.5. I think the 10.5s are all gone now. We're seeing 11s out there. But USC's just been beleaguered by injuries all season long. They've had a lot of problems. And the freshman quarterback, JT Daniels, never really got going. The injuries, like I just stated, the fact that Clay Helton wrestled play calling duties back for himself, and that hasn't even gone well. But I think the biggest thing to watch in this game, the biggest number that stood out to me, was the fact that USC's last 6 games, the 5 opponents they played that weren't Oregon State, and I took Oregon State out just because their defense is so putrid, you can't put them into this number. But 5 of the last 6 opponents USC's faced have outrushed them 201 to 99. You just don't hear of a USC team getting dominated at the point of attack in that fashion. 201 to 99. Tough to wrap your head around that when you're talking about USC, but that's the fact right now. And Notre Dame is certainly a strength of theirs, is the point of attack on both sides of the football. Offensive line, defensive line. They run the ball very, very well with Dexter Williams. Certainly since they've got Ian Book back, they're so diverse on offense. They're difficult to stop. They're staring at an undefeated season and a spot in the college football playoff. USC staring at firing Clay Helton and a laundry list of injuries. I just don't know if Notre Dame comes to play here, Drew, that USC can keep up. I think that loss last week to UCLA has to be as deflating a loss as USC's had in a few years. They're holding a lead heading into the fourth quarter, like we've said before, against a freshman-laden team led by Chip Kelly, and they give up that lead and lose the game to the crosstown rival. I think the season ended right there. I would agree with the money move here. I think Notre Dame was obviously good enough for me to recommend it at 10.5. Now we're seeing 11. I do think Notre Dame's probably 2 touchdowns better than USC at this point, whether it's home, road, anywhere.
We got the Iron Bowl, 3:30 Eastern on CBS. Auburn at Alabama, 52.5 the total, with the Tide laying 24 in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, boy, these Alabama numbers, you look at them and they look so large, Drew. I mean, you just Alabama 24 over Auburn. You say to yourself, everything. How could that possibly be? But then they go out and they make 24 look small. So I don't know. What's 24 to Alabama is maybe 10 to somebody else. If Auburn could score, I would trust them more. I mean, just the fact that the rivalry situation is in play, I think we have to consider Auburn with 24 points. But when I put other things together, like Alabama sluggishly going through that game at Citadel last week, that does nothing but give Nick Saban motivation to coach his team even harder this week. Alabama, by leaps and bounds, the more explosive team, the team with far more options on offense, whether it be run or pass. Auburn's got to play this entire game or cover this game with their defense. And at some point in time, I just feel like even if they're holding up, the floodgates will crash in on them and Alabama will come through. Alabama's defense has improved so much over the last 3 weeks that it's hard to see Auburn getting near the 17-point mark, or let's say above the 17-point mark. Certainly a defensive touchdown, a return touchdown, any of that stuff can happen. We see it happen in these types of games all the time. But over the course of 60 minutes, I'd probably have to play Alabama. I won't, because 24 is such a key number, and there's no reason to get involved at that price. But it's hard to make a case for Auburn. You'd have to bet it. Just, make a couple of fists, grit your teeth, and hope that when you open your eyes again, the final score gives you a victory, because it's going to be a tough road for Auburn in this game, I think.
We've got 229, 230 here. Late night action. Nevada at UNLV. Looks like Nevada laying 14 or 13.5 on the road, 63.5 the total in Las Vegas.
Well, Jay Norvell's done a great job with this team, Drew. They are playing as good as anybody in the Mountain West, not named Utah State or Fresno State right now, or even Boise State. They're right there underneath that Elite Three in that league. They defeated San Diego State, so you can put them right in that class. But they become such a physical football team. Not only do they have the air raid system in place, but they're physical. They're good on the defensive front. They're good on the offensive front. They run the football at you, and the defensive intensity is picked up. They haven't given up more than 24 points in any of their last 4 games. And if you go back 7 games, you'll find that they only gave up over 25 one time in their last 7 games. after watching that Toledo game in early September when they just got ripped drive after drive, that's a huge improvement for this Nevada Wolfpack team. Coaching staff gets a lot of credit. Players get a lot of credit. It's the exact opposite of what we heard coming out from UNLV camp after that game ended last week in Hawaii. There were reports of, bickering on the sidelines and that it might be a long plane ride home, and the players are not in tune with the coach right now. Tony Sanchez could be on his way out. It's not the way you want to enter a rivalry game. I think that Nevada right now is like a freight train, and UNLV is, not much of a barrier to stop them. So I understand the line move. I think I may get involved myself here. Nevada's kind of changed their persona from a higher scoring type over style game to a real good, because of their improvement on defense, it keeps games lower scoring. So 62 is a tough number here, especially if the Nevada defense just shuts down that UNLV running game. Lexington Thomas obviously will have a bullseye on his chest in this contest. I think Nevada's a good way to go here, and I myself, like I say, may get involved in this game still.
Get that game here, 231, 232, 10:30 Eastern kick. Hawaii at San Diego State, 54 the total. SDSU laying 17 at home.
And we barely even have to do much analysis with this team, Drew. All we have to do is, if they're laying double digits, play the dog. And if they're the ones getting double digits, play them. I mean, last week they had a situation where they were missing 3 starting offensive linemen. And it looked like a real tough fundamental matchup against Fresno State. They opened up 16, which was probably too high, but they got bet all the way down to 10. So even the latest of the latecomers to the party still got the money, because San Diego State played tough, as they always do. Low-scoring game, lose 23-14, get the cover. Hawaii will not announce their quarterback until game day, according to head coach Nick Rolovich. Obviously, Chevin Cordero, the highly touted true freshman out of St. Louis High, the same high school that Marcus Mariota went to. He comes in the fourth quarter last week in what seemed like a loss to UNLV, and really what precipitated all the bickering on the sidelines for UNLV. And Cordero goes 4 for 5 with 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, 22 consecutive points. Hawaii wins the game. We noted early in the season when his name was mentioned as a potential starter, and then he did start one game because of an injury to Cole McDonald, that he's well-versed in the run and shoot. That's the offense they ran at his high school. So to see him in this game, maybe Rolovich wants to take a look at him. It's a tough defense to go up against, boy, in your second start of your career, but he's certainly that gifted and that highly touted. We'll see who plays quarterback for Hawaii. No matter who does, I think, to play this game, I can be as simple as I was when I started this analysis. Just grab points if San Diego State's laying double digits, because it's way too hard for them to cover a number like 17 the way they play
last
offense.
Game here, 233, 234, Arizona State at Arizona. Looks like the Sun Devils laying 1.5 in Tucson, 64.5 the total.
Yeah, last week was a disaster for the Wildcats. They go up to Pullman. It's freezing cold, and Washington State comes out red hot throwing the football with Gardner Minshew. They attack the weakness of that Arizona defense, and it was a lost cause from the get-go. Used that as the 5% play last week, that total. I don't know, Drew, over all the years I've been doing this, if I had a total that high that won in the first half. But that one did, because of Washington State's offense. Here you're going to get a much more competitive effort out of Khalil Tate and company for sure. They will. They're playing for bowl eligibility here. First-year head coach Kevin Sumlin has had them on somewhat of an upswing the past month. They've shown improvement in their offensive game. Arizona State's obviously got holes that can be attacked. And the same goes on the other side. The weakness of this Arizona team right now is the defense, which is getting shredded and can be thrown on. They're going to miss 2 starting safeties at the start of this game, and N'Keal Harry and Manny Wilkins at quarterback and Harry at receiver are likely to take advantage of the secondary in the first half. So I'd look for ASU, Herm Edwards, to attack the weakness early on, maybe get themselves a lead before one kid comes back in the second half because he's out for a targeting suspension. So you could see a lot of points here in this game. I think this is one that sort of shapes up as a high scoring, one of those Pac-12 late at night type contests. 64.5 seems like a reasonable number for both of these squads.
All right, Robbie, good stuff. Good breakdowns down the board. Guys, remember the coupon code SHOOTOUT at checkout for half off Robbie's 7-day all-access package on sportsmemo.com. You can get that for any handicapper, actually. Robbie, anything else you want to throw out there to the listenership before we shut this down for the holidays?
Certainly, we want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. If you are traveling, travel safe. Like you say, Drew, we won't be back until next week. So, but do check the Sports Memo website for plays. I know myself, Drew, that I'm continually putting them up one at a time, piecemeal, as I see them. We're sort of time constrained this week, but you always have to make sure that the work is thorough before you put up plays. So be sure to come back often to the site over the course of these next, I would say starting right now until Friday night, Saturday night, when all the NFL should be in. But you want to keep looking, because I know myself, I'm going to be updating continually. I'm finally settled where I'm going to be for the holidays. So give it a look. Some plays are up already, more to come. Lots of college basketball tomorrow as well. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Thanks to all our listeners.
Happy Thanksgiving to you. Enjoy the time with your family, and best of luck with your bets.
Same to you, Drew. I'll get back with you next week.